Now, Ryan, you went through the horror of horrors as a father. I can't imagine. It puts me in tears thinking about what you did. You lost your daughter at Parkland to a mass killer.
Right.
You were failed at every level, from what I can see, by the local, state, and federal bureaucracy.
Right.
They knew this kid was a problem, and they let it happen through a lot of bad policy and bad thinking. You've worked hard to change things, change the system in Florida and on the federal level since then.
Yep.
And I think you've even consulted in other states.
Yep.
So can you tell me what you've done, what's changed, and are you more optimistic that we're moving in the right direction?
Well, great. Yes, I lost my daughter Alaina on February 14, 2018. Changed my life forever. She was a freshman sitting in her English class when a gunman went through an unlocked gate, through an unlocked door, and began to, shoot anyone that he could see. Parkland, for me, was that day was the most difficult day of my life, and it forced me to think about a lot of things. My daughter, one of her favorite things was to go shooting with Dad. And, I'd be lying if I didn't tell you, I sort of had to step back and say, am I right about this Second Amendment thing? Is this the right thing? But Frank, I sat on the commission that was tasked with investigating the tragedy. So we learned great details about what happened. This was a failure of government. This was not an issue of our liberties or Second Amendment or law-abiding gun owners, or gun control is not the solution to Parkland and these other tragedies. What I learned is that we had law enforcement with the wrong policy, inadequate training, and unfortunately there was only one on the campus, and he chose not to intervene that day.
You hid outside.
He hid outside for 48 minutes. It was a failure at the educational system to deal with these disruptive and often violent students that should not be in our classrooms. They should be in alternative schools. And the killer in Parkland, the story that most people don't know, is that he attacked he attacked another student in kindergarten. He'd been a threat to students the entire time he was in the public school system. And for a period of time, they chose to deal with him by putting him in an alternative school. And I hate to use this word, but he almost thrived in that environment with a few more restrictions and more adult supervision and consequences for his actions. And so, but they chose to put him back into the regular school, regular classroom. And then that was part of the reason he targeted Stoneman Douglas High School. But the issues, what we've done in Florida to protect our schools is really unlike anything I've seen in any of the other states. And it took the Parkland tragedy and the death of 17, unfortunately, to get us there. But, we lock doors and gates now. We have what's called single point of entry. So we know who's on our school campuses. We have school resource officers and armed guardians on our campuses across the state of Florida. And that means we've armed teachers and we've armed staff. And so there are multiple people with firearms on the campuses of our schools in Florida, so that if somebody chooses to target one of our schools, they are not gun-free zones. They are gun-filled zones, and that person is they are going to run and end that threat quickly. We've done a lot about prevention. So we took the model that the Secret Service uses to protect the president and other elected officials, called behavioral threat management, and we've implemented that across the state of Florida. So we're finding out about these potential tragedies before they happen, during the planning phases, even sometimes before a threat is made. And we're able to get a hold of that student and get them redirected into a more positive direction. Or
help they need, right?
Help they need, or if they are in fact threatening or planning, or they've acquired weapons or whatever, well then they get arrested and they get put in the juvenile justice system. But we're preventing these kind of tragedies in Florida. In February, we hosted a national summit on school safety in Florida. I'm proud to say it was our first annual. But we invited all the states in the United States to come and learn from what we're doing. And we invited some others that are doing some really interesting things. Like Utah is a great example of doing something without a tragedy. But we invited them to Florida. 20 states came.
Wow.
And we had a day and a half of seminars and just sharing the information. And I talked to a number of folks that were there, and they were just blown away by what we were doing. And they were just excited to get back to their states and implement these things. Because what we hear in the media is that gun control is the solution to these things. And I'm here to tell you, gun control will not solve these targeted violence attacks against our schools or other places like our churches or workplace violence or shopping malls or wherever this situation happens, Frank. It's really about this behavioral threat management and prevention, and then eliminating these areas as soft targets.
Right, we're an open and free society, so we're a society of soft targets.
Yep.
But schools, for example, there's lots that we can do. Have you worked with the NRA at all? Because I know the NRA also has a program that helps schools.
Yeah, the NRA was pioneering this a long time before, and I have not worked directly with the NRA. I'm excited to do that.
Right.
I'm excited for what the potential the NRA has to really have a positive impact in this space. We need to get aligned as a country on what the solution is here and stop the quibbling and debates and fighting over gun control, because unfortunately, the gun control advocates and activists want this to be about gun control. They want to take these tragedies, like the death of my daughter, and they want to use it for their political advantage. And we have to step back as freedom-loving, liberty-loving Americans and say, no, we're not going to act on emotion. We're going to understand why these things happen and what are the practical and effective solutions, and we're going to push forward with those.
Right, guns save a lot of lives. They empower a lot of people who could be victims, but are able to defend themselves until police can arrive. They're an important part of our freedom. It's a critical part of our freedom, and that's why it's our Second Amendment. It's a shame that so much of the media is blaming the gun, but it's heartening to hear how much you're doing. And I personally didn't realize that schools in Florida, the teachers have a chance to carry and protect their students, because if they do kill, if the bad guy comes, there's a school resource officer in uniform, clearly the guy. You would think that first person they would shoot if they wanted to do that sort of atrocity would be him.
Yes.
Or her, right? And then they would go into the school. But what kind of things do these teachers have to go through to get trained, to get ready to be a part of this?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and you're absolutely right. There have been a number of attacks against school resource officers initially, and then, the attacker wanted to go eliminate the single point of response, and then go to attack the rest of the school. So the Guardian program was an idea that was developed by my sheriff, where I live now in Florida, Grady Judd, fantastic sheriff, and he had this idea of having, 2 is 1, 3 is 2, 2 is 1. It's that principle of having multiple people that are willing to go together to stop these killers or these attackers and eliminate the threat. And so after Parkland, the legislature passed this, and of course Governor Scott, now Senator Scott, signed the bill to put this into law. But the training is intense. It's 196 hours. I've gone through the Guardian training. I wanted to go through it to see what it's like. And it's intensive classroom work, and it's so much time on the range. Frank, I had blisters. We shot so much, I had blisters. And our guardians in Florida have to qualify with a firearm at a higher proficiency level than law enforcement. It's phenomenal. I went through with 6 teachers, and I'm sitting here, I will tell you, I would trust them with my children's lives. I trust some of these teachers with my grandchildren's lives at this point, but I would run to a threat with any of them with full confidence. It's a phenomenal program, and it has protected Florida schools. I'm convinced these guardians are a deterrent to these attackers.
And they're volunteers.
Volunteers.
That's often what the media will say, that we can't force a school teacher to also be a police officer.
That's
no,
right.
You should.
Right.
But there are some that can step up. Some are former military.
Correct.
Or even former police officers.
Correct.
So I'm hearing hope that the right things are being changed here. Because as I recall, I think the police went to the Parkland murderers' home something like 40 times.
Yes.
And he had already attacked his mother. And
Yes.
it was a known problem.
Yeah.
He was an individual who should have been found and given the help and stopped long before. I don't even think his name was in the NICS system.
No, it was
Given
not.
all he did. It's absolutely ridiculous. And then to blame guns, which is too much of the media is doing for this, is, from my point of view, that's taking the resources away from where they should be pointed.
Right.
In order to find the problems it seems like you're finding.
Yeah, what we find so often in these tragedies, it's more of a failure of communication between government agencies. I call it just a failure of government, right? But really what happened is the school district knew he was violent. Law enforcement knew he was violent. The mental health provider in Broward County knew he was violent, but they weren't talking to each other. And I'd like to think that if they had communicated and shared the information, like law enforcement knew he was violent to his mother, right? They knew he had attacked his mother, and there were a bunch of warning signs. He attacked neighborhood animals and pets and things like that. The school district knew he was violent and was bringing weapons to school. And the mental health provider knew, some of the really disturbing things that he was saying and things that he wanted to do. I mean, he made it very clear he wanted to kill people and hurt them and see what it was like for people to die, right? That's what he was fantasizing about. So if they had communicated, I'd like to think I wouldn't be sitting here with you today. It would have been a different outcome. But unfortunately, too often laws get passed too often with good intentions, but there's no accountability that comes along with these things. So really what we've learned in Florida is we have to have open communication. Law enforcement's not the enemy for our educational institutions. They're there to protect our students and our educators. And so we've opened the doorway of communication for those two government entities to have a good relationship, which is in everyone's interest to do that. Cops aren't there to put kids in jail. That's not what they want to do. That's not that's not the job they signed up for. But too often the educators thought that that's why they were there. And we see that time and time again. Unfortunately, we've got to change that mindset. I'm happy to say, as I sit here and to give you hope, in Florida, now 7 years on, we are seeing good communication between these groups. It's not perfect. I don't want to sit here with rose-colored glasses and say everything's good. We're going to prevent 100% of the tragedies, but I think we can get most of them, if not all of them. But it requires that collaboration, and we've unfortunately had to force that in Florida. And in my role on the State Board of Education, occasionally we've had to threaten school board members and superintendents with withholding their salary, which we can do in the state of Florida if they don't follow our school safety best practices. And so you've got to have good intentions have to be followed up by accountability and leaders willing to hold our public elected officials accountable.
Well said. Run for your school board.
Yeah.
If
Yes.
you're listening to this, pay
100%.
attention. Where can they go? What resources can you point them to? There's so much here.
Yes.
There's so much education needed here.
Yep.
Where can they go? Where would you send them?
So one of the things we did with the Trump administration the last time was we created schoolsafety.gov. So if I could point people to one place, I'd say go to schoolsafety.gov. Now, with President Trump being reelected recently, that resource is going to get even better and stronger. And so it's a one-stop shop for educators, law enforcement, mental health professionals, even regular citizens, parents even, to go there and understand what schools should be doing to protect themselves. The Secret Service also has a group called the National Threat Assessment Center. So if you go to secretservice.gov and look for National Threat Assessment Center, they've got some wonderful research there to do that. And then the last thing, shameless plug, I'll just point to the Florida Department of Education. Parents anywhere in the United States can go to that FLDOE.org and look for the Office of Safe Schools. And we've published, we want to share everything that we've learned in Florida with anyone that would want to take up the banner and push for school safety.
What about you? Because if I was a school superintendent in a state or school district, I didn't think I'd done enough to prepare and make things as safe as it. How can I find you? How can I talk to you?
Yeah, the best way to reach me is at that Florida Department of Education. Just look for our board. My email address is there, my contact information. I'd be happy to help. I'll be going to Wisconsin later this month. I've been to Indiana, Ohio, Georgia, Utah, California. I'll go anywhere that I need to go to help get the policies and help legislators pass school safety, good, effective school safety legislation. So that's my passion.
God bless you, and thanks for all you're doing.
Yeah. Thank you, Frank.